Okay, thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. The subcommittee today is made up of councillors Jackie Davies, Nicola Nardelli and Andrew Waldridge. The first item of business is the appointment of a chair for the meeting. May I ask subcommittee members to nominate the chair for the meeting?
Nominate Jackie, Councillor Jackie, please.
Could I second that, please?
Thank you. It is agreed that Councillor Davies, Jackie Davies, is in the chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. This meeting is being broadcast live, recorded, and will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel. The agenda is available on the Council's website by following the links to your Council and decision-making, consultations and surveys, and then committee agendas and minutes. The quorum for this meeting is 3 members, and all will need to be present at all times. If any subcommittee member or legal advisor loses connection, we will pause to allow them to rejoin as soon as possible. To reduce feedback, could everyone mute their microphone while not speaking? After the subcommittee has heard the submission, I will ask if members have any questions on the submission. Members can also indicate that they wish to speak by using the chat function. Please do not use the chat function to ask questions of officers or members, and remember that all meeting participants on the video call will be able to see what has been entered into the chat. Please keep your mobile phones in silent mode or switched off during the meeting. I am Councillor Jackie Davis, and I will now introduce the other participants in the meeting. This morning we have Councillor Andrew Waldridge, we have Councillor Nicola Nardelli, Guy Bishop, the legal advisor, Nikki Bentley, the licensing officer, Alice Aubrey is here as Democratic Services, as you know. We have the applicant Andy Rickman and 2 others. There were 13 valid representations from other persons against the application, and we have, it says 3 people in attendance, but I think we only have 2. Is that correct? Thank you. We now move on to declarations of interest. I need to ask if any member of the subcommittee has a pecuniary interest, non-registrable interest, or any other registrable interest to declare in relation to either of the applications today.
No, I don't.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you both. We need to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 26th of February as a correct record. Can I take those as a correct record?
Yep, correct record.
Yeah, and I will sign them at a later date. The parties have been already notified of the usual procedures for licensing hearings as set out on pages 4 to 6 of the licensing agenda. Paragraph 57 on page 5 of the agenda pack deals with notification of the decision following the subcommittee's deliberations. This will firstly be confirmed by email later today, and full details and reasons will follow within 5 working days. Are there any objections to proceeding on the basis of those procedures? No, thank you. So we now move to the hearing itself, which is for New Malden Sports Club, Somerset Close, New Malden, KT3 5RJ. It's an application for a new premises licence under the Licensing Act 2003. Appendix A on page A1 of the agenda sets out the details. The licensing officer presentation will now take place. I'm going to ask Nikki Bentley, the licensing officer, to introduce the report on the application. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. This application for a new premises licence relates to New Malden Sports Club, Somerset Close, New Malden, KT3 5RG. The application was made on the 18th of January by Andrew Rickman on behalf of New Malden Sports Club. Initially, the application sought a new premises licence to permit sale of alcohol, late night refreshment and regulated entertainment as detailed in Annex 1 of their application form. However, following consultation with responsible authorities, the application was amended and the hours sought were reduced to opening hours, Sunday to Thursday, 7 AM till 11:30 PM. Friday and Saturday, 7 AM till midnight midnight. The sale by retail of alcohol, Sunday to Thursday, 9 AM to 11 PM, Friday and Saturday, 9 AM till midnight. The provision of live music, Thursday, midday to 11 PM, Friday and Saturday, midday till midnight, Sunday, 10 AM to 11 PM. The provision of recorded music, Sunday to Thursday, 9 AM to 11 PM, Friday and Saturday, 9 AM till midnight. The provision of performance of dance, Sunday to Thursday, 9 AM to 11 PM, Friday and Saturday, 9 AM till midnight. The provision of anything similar, of a similar description to live music, recorded music, or the performance of dance, Sunday to Thursday, 9 AM to 11 PM, Friday and Saturday, 9 AM till midnight. And then finally, late night refreshments, Friday and Saturday, 11 PM till midnight. The premises currently benefits from a club premises certificate, but it is seeking a premises licence to allow members of the public, i.e. non-club members, to use the facilities on offer by way of pre-booked private functions without having to submit temporary event notices each time. Relevant pages of the application form are attached in Annex 1, and the proposed amended hours of operation are laid out in Annex 2, along with the current hours for the licensable activities currently on the club certificate. I can confirm that the applicant has advertised the application by way of public notice displayed at the premises and in a local newspaper. It's also been made available on the council's website for the full consultation period. I can confirm that all responsible authorities received a copy of the application. The Metropolitan Police is the responsible authority for the prevention of crime and disorder licence and objective, and Trading Standards is the responsible authority for the protection of children from harm licence and objective, initially raised concerns regarding this application. Following further consultation, the applicant has addressed these concerns by making amendments to the operating schedule, and these amendments are reflected in conditions shown in Annex 3, as well as in the amended hours shown in Annex 2 of the licensing report. In light of these amendments, the concerns raised have been satisfied and no representations were received from responsible authorities. In accordance with the Council's licensing policy, 125 addresses were consulted in writing and informed that an application had been received. 13 valid representations were received from other persons. However, since the agenda was published, one has been withdrawn, leaving 12 valid representations. This person also submitted late material, however, wishes for this to also be withdrawn. You are therefore asked to disregard pages A51, as well as all pages of the late material A1, A2 and A3, which was submitted last week. The remaining representations make reference to matters that relate to the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance, public safety and the protection of children from harm licence and objectives. And copies of these are attached in Annex 4. In response to the objections received, the applicant, Mr. Rickman, asked the licensing officer to send out an email to all persons who had made representation, addressing their concerns, and a copy of this email is attached in Annex 5. Following this email, a response was received from a person who had submitted a valid representation. As this further comment was received after the consultation end date, this email is submitted as additional material in Annex 6. A map showing the approximate location of the premises is attached in Annex 7, and some photographs of the premises and surrounding area are attached for your information in Annex 8 even, sorry. In considering this report, you are required to take into account the Secretary of State's guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, our licensing policy, and the licensing objectives. The Council's licensing policy was reviewed in July 2021, and it now includes some guidelines on licensing and trading hours, and these are included within Annex 9. You are asked to determine the application, having regard to the representations received and any evidence heard at the hearing in line with the options set out in paragraph 18 of the licensing report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members, that is councillors, have any questions for Nikki, please?
No.
I have one quick one. Can you confirm that the actual hours, closing hours, are not that different from what they are at the moment? And how many events are due to be held a year?
So the closing hours discussed with police were brought in line with what is currently on the licence. It's in Annex 2. And it was agreed with the Metropolitan Police that there would be non-specific extensions included in the operating schedule, and 12 were agreed. They would have to notify the police and the council of any events they intended to hold and to what time. Does that help?
Sorry, I wasn't aware of
Was
a
it
non-specific
16? Was it
extension.
16 or 12? I couldn't remember.
There's 12. It's condition 7 on the operating schedule, which is in Annex 3. And I can tell you what page. It'll be page A30.
So just to clarify, a non-specific extension can go on until any time.
Until any time later than they currently have, or what they've applied for, sorry. And the police can comment or negotiate with them.
Thank you.
Similar to a temporary event notice.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from members? Okay. Thank you, Nikki. So I'm going to turn to the applicant now. Sorry.
Jackie, I do, but I
Sorry,
want
go
to hear a bit more about what's going on with this, with those temporary, with the engagements it's having. I'll come back to you on it. I just need to flesh a bit more out from the applicant. Thank you.
Okay. So, sorry, we'll now turn to the applicant. I'd like to call on the applicant, Andy Rickman, to give a summary of his application. Paragraph 47 on page 4 of the agenda pack deals with the length of time an applicant can speak. As 3 objectors, well, 2 are here, are registered to speak, the applicant will be accorded up to 15 minutes. Alice, is that still true, or is it now 10? I'm a bit
We can
confused.
now give 10, yes. I think we
Okay,
can.
so you can have up to 10 minutes to present your submission. Alice would advise you when you have 1 minute left and when your time is up. So Andy Rickman, when you're ready, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Rickman, and many of the objectors regarding from the local residents raised concern about our club turning into a nightclub and a late night drinking establishment, and the plan to move away from being a sports club. I'd like to rest assure everyone that this is in no way whatsoever true, and we will not have no plans to move away from our heritage, which is a sports club. And the only reason for the adjustment to the license is obviously as costs have risen, to have these non-specific events for non-members, I should say, in our badminton hall on a Saturday evening, which wouldn't go on past our current club operating hours. And to give you an example, even though we've been agreed for 12 non-specific times with the police, which the police also have the absolute right to veto in the event that they don't agree with us. I think under attendance of the previous year, we only had 1 event that went on past midnight, and that was for a charity function. So there's absolutely no intention to be using those. It probably, as I say, the charity function, New Year's Eve, if we decide to have a New Year's party, maybe 1 or 2 more, if anything, but that's literally going to be our limit. So a bit of background on New Malden. We came into existence in 1922, having been gifted the land in the buildings to create a tennis and sporting club. Over the following years, badminton and squash were added and have remained at the sports club for over 100 years. In 1980, members agreed to convert the club into a limited company, which became New Malden Tennis, Sport, Squash and Badminton Club Limited, and remains our registered title to the present day. And our articles start with the clause stating to maintain the aim of maintaining, promote sports, tennis, squash, badminton, and any other sports that we can create to support this aim. We've always been a members club and have always been a non-profit making club, with all monies being used to maintain the sports club. And in the early 2010s, we applied and was accepted for a CASC status, which is more commonly known as a registered charity. Although we are a members club, we are proud to say that we also provide sport in the community, especially children. We provide many classes with adult and junior coaching that are open to both members and non-members. Many of our members have been with us for over 40 years and have organised events and parties for our members. And we do realise that music has changed in both style and volume over the years. as going back to the start, with our financial problems faced with the country over the last few years, we found it difficult to maintain our membership and facilities. And so we found it financially benefit to hire out the hall for private functions, which has slowly helped us to improve the facilities. We're currently waiting receipt of a considerable injection of money for the sale of 2 of our disused and abandoned tennis courts down the far end. Should this, and when we receive this, we should hopefully be able to move away from requiring as many functions, because we'll no longer be reliant on it, and we can certainly pick and choose which functions we were to hold, and we'd be more reliant just on members having functions rather than non-members functions. Over the years, we've always tried to consider for our neighbours and been pleased to meet with them, and is still the case, as was stated in my email. I'm happy, and even went above that. I gave my details in there, which wasn't a requirement from the licensing authority, and we're still always happy to meet with our neighbours, and to some of the things that was agreed in my email go above what is actually required in our licence changeover. Our opening hours, which was originally were to just cover the reason it said 1:30 on a Friday and Saturday, was to avoid the need to fill in late night tens licenses on the odd occasion. But seen as I can understand what it looked like when people have just read that, that's why we rode back with the police and just went, let's put it back to what our current club license end time is, and that's where they agreed to have these 12 non-specific if we require them. And as I say, last year we would have only used 1, and I think we plan to use 2 this year if the charity function goes ahead and the New Year's party goes ahead. Other than that, our closing times will remain the same, and actually, even though on our license we are allowed to open till 11:30, I think, Monday to Friday, we actually close the bar at 10:30. Everybody's out by 11, other than if there's something, a snooker match or a badminton match that's overrunning, but again, that's a sporting event, certainly not a music event. We're not a nightclub and do not intend to become one, and I say very rarely hold functions on a Friday night, because especially during the winter and summer months, it's actually a badminton club night for matches, so it's only on the odd occasion that we ever hold functions on a Friday night. But obviously it is a possibility, but it's very rare. In fact, I'm not actually sure if you can recall the last one we held on a Friday night, but there's very few of them, and certainly I'm not planning to hold very many of them. Most of them would be on a Saturday night if there's going to be. As I say, we are predominantly a sports club, with the exception of badminton, which is played on our hall. The tennis courts, squash courts and gym are available 7 days a week, and will continue to be so. Badminton is played mainly in the daytimes and the evenings, Monday to Friday, all year round. Fridays and Sunday nights are their club matches, so there's certainly, as I say, not going to be very many functions held on a Friday, and we don't hold evening functions on a Sunday because we close early at 9 o'clock, despite, again, our license is till 11:30 on a Sunday. But as I'm a person that works Sunday nights, most nights, I can testify that we actually close the bar at 9 and everyone's out by 9:30. With regards to the sound during the evenings, the only music that's played Sunday to Friday is the background music in the hall, or pardon?
In the lounge.
Oh, sorry, in the lounge. Sorry, the only music that's played is the background music in the lounge, or the sound from the TV, which is obviously not very rarely heard outside. Obviously, during the day, we're allowed to play music till 7 p.m. outside. But again, this was only added to the license, I think, because we have 1 or 2 events during the year where we have a specific A3 Korean tournament where they might have some dancers or band music outside, but it's certainly for about 10 or 15 minutes, and it may be once or twice a year. That is, again, very rare. There's certainly not going to be any bands or discos outside unless we win the lottery, in which case all the residents will be invited. There are certainly some children's parties and christenings held in the day, but they're internal, and the music won't be played outside. It will only be in the hall or the lounge areas, we're subject to the same controls as the evenings. As far as the hall is concerned, we intend to keep the double glazing doors shut during events, and we will also look that if it's necessary to put a sound leveler in the hall. So if it exceeds the sound after a certain time of night, then the music can be turned down to a more reasonable level. What's the next bit? We take drugs and child safety very seriously. And to our knowledge, have never had a drugs problem. Although whilst we cannot trust drug test visitors, we've never found any guests that appear to be using drugs. And the police are happy that we don't have any crime or drugs issues. Our club drive, although private, is open 24 hours a day, and we're not able to prevent members from parking overnight. And we do allow neighbours to drive through and walk through our driveway, and we strive to keep everyone safe. When locking up in the evening, we check all vehicles to ensure there are
1 minute
nobody.
left.
Thank you. Using it for any illicit purposes, and any cars left overnight are generally members or guests that have walked home, or residents making use of the car park. And we're confident we don't have a drug or antisocial issue. The present chairman has been a member for over 45 years. The police have only ever visited for a couple of break-ins or robberies in neighbouring gardens, and we've always had a good relationship. And in child welfare, seems to be a concern, which we have several NGB qualified coaches that cover safeguarding, and we have a club safeguarding officer and deputy safeguarding officer, who I happen to be the deputy safeguarding officer as well. And in mention of litter, although this wasn't subject to the licensing control, we do try to keep the litter as clean as possible. All our food and waste is putting large waste bins every day.
Time is up, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I remind everyone to mute their microphones when not speaking? Thank you. We come to members' questions. Do members have any? This is the councillors. Do you have any questions of the applicant? Yes, thank you, Councillor Nardelli.
On your existing licence, it says that you're limited to 15. How many of those 15 are you using at the moment?
This year so far, we've used evening functions. I think we've used 10.
Okay. And there's a matter that I'm quite concerned at. When licensing came down and you were holding a party for non-members, how did that happen? How did that come about?
So it was a wake for a long-standing member, and this was just after we'd contacted the council to look at where we were with our license. Our previous bar and events manager had just resigned, and we were in the process of moving over, and we wrongly assumed that as it was a party for a member, that it wasn't subject to a TENS license. When Nikki and Hannah turned up, we subsequently found out that was incorrect, as there was non-members in attendance, which we obviously didn't hide about, and we had 2 licensing committee members down during the function. So we assumed, because it was hired for a member, and there was a fair amount of members in the room, but they weren't signed. The non-members wouldn't have been signed in, as I say, we wasn't aware of the situation. And since that event, all other events have been held regardless of numbers, subject to the correct TENS applications that are required.
Okay, so did you keep a management book on parties before that date?
Yeah, all functions are listed in our diaries, in our calendar diary,
With members and guests being checked in and checked out and listed on the list?
Prior to that meeting, that event that Nikki and Hannah came down in the middle of, we wasn't aware that we were on the wrong license, so we didn't have club checks in that respect. as I say, we wrongly assumed we were on the correct or we were on a license that allowed us to have these functions. But as I say, that's the purpose of this changing, so that we're no longer on a club license and we can have non-members events without having to have the TENS applications. As I say, we were operating incorrectly, and we once it was pointed out to us, we've changed. That's why we've gone through the change to change it straight away.
So just to clarify, you thought you had the license before you applied for the license that you were applying for?
Yeah, we were unaware that on the club license that we couldn't have non-members in attendance. It was only when our bar and events manager left, and our club secretary contacted the council to find out what the next steps would need to be to appoint somebody new. And that was when it was pointed out that we held functions for non-members, and then we obviously were told you can't do that on your current club license, and therefore we need to change over to a premises license, or you're only limited to the 15 TENS licenses that you're allowed to apply for a year.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I think Guy wanted to come in there. You're muted, Councillor Davies.
Thank you. Can we go to Guy next? Thank you.
Sorry, it was just to clarify, a club premises certificate does allow members to invite bona fide guests to attend, and there are times when that right has been misinterpreted in terms of the numbers that might be in attendance. So that maybe that was what was going on before, but certainly it's correct that if you've got the majority of the people there who aren't members, it becomes a little bit out of that criteria and that compliance.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from members? Thank you, Councillor Waldridge. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. This member most definitely is a member. My concern is with regard to the club going forward is non-members. And we really do need to see some rigorous training taking place within the management, that there's the assuming, because we all know, the old joke, we all know what assume does. So we need to ensure that there's some rigorous training done there with management, with knowing what you can and cannot do. So what training are you proposing to put in, if you haven't already done so, with regard to understanding the regulations on this?
So with the club premises certificate, there is no, as far as my understanding is, you don't require a designated license premises supervisor, to which obviously it was just run, that the club was just run by the manager, and we haven't changed our license in, can you remember when this license was taken out?
2003, the original one.
So no one in particular would have been checking that, unless there was something that come up that should have been checked. Obviously with the club premises license, you're required to have a designated premises supervisor, which is now going to be myself. I've undergone and now hold an official personal license, and with that then I will be responsible for making sure that any regulation changes, albeit small or big, are adhered to, and obviously all the staff are trained appropriately where required.
Yeah, it's the training, it's when you're not there that's the issues, that's the concern. So the appropriate training will need to be taken by the people that when you're not in situ. Look, that's fine. Thanks very much. I'm just padding this out. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. If you're having a party on a Saturday night, who are the staff? Are they just members of the club who just happen to be on a rota, or who are they?
So there's 6 of us that work behind the bar, myself, Linda, who's the bar and events manager, and then another lady that's worked behind the bar for a few years, and then there's 3 sort of other part-time staff that come in as and when on a rota basis. But when there is a Saturday night function, it'll either be normally myself or Linda that would be in charge running the function that evening.
Thank you. Councillor Wardridge, we'll come back to you. I've got some more questions in a minute. Thank you. Councillor Wardridge, you are muted.
Yeah, sorry, no, I thought you were going to go to do a few more, Jackie. You carry on. I'll be after you.
Okay. My next question is about the air conditioning unit that you said you would ask for in your reply to the residents. Is that going to happen? Would you accept that as a condition to getting this license, that you must have an air conditioning unit? And my comment is really that one of the residents said that even with their windows closed and your windows and doors closed, they could still hear your music. So will it make any difference?
Well, I undertook a sound test myself on Saturday night this week when we had a temporary event notice in place, and with our windows shut, still on our premises, our noise wasn't that loud, and it made it up to about 60 decibels on my reading. And that's still on our premises, so I'm not sure how loud it would have been inside their premises, but obviously I wasn't there to measure the sound at their property. I'm, as I'm sure the committee will tell you, I'm pushing for the air conditioning unit to be installed. The only thing we have to inspect is obviously the walls are a bit old, so they may require. It may not be feasible to put the bigger units on the wall, in which case we may have to look at something like portable units that could be strategically placed around the room. But if it was a case of install some form of air conditioning or your license is rejected, then I think the committee would agree to it. That is something I'd have to go to the committee with, but I certainly can't. If it's that or no license, I think they would agree to it. In terms of measuring the sound in somebody else's property, as was pointed out, what different people class as loud sound is obviously going to be very different. He'd have to go and measure it from their property to actually say what it was registering there. As I said, I did it for a decibel meter that I possess on Saturday night, and it outside our property it only registered at 60, and that was with the music inside at 111 decibels.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Nardelli next, please.
My next batch of questions are about noise, actually, the outside noise. You said earlier that it's a Korean event with Korean dancing, which happens once a year. So is it just getting out temporary? Sorry?
That's the same thing. So that Korean one was actually a one-off that they did for our centenary day.
Okay.
So it's not a regular thing as far as I'm aware.
Okay, so the outside music isn't something that's necessarily required then?
Not particularly, no.
Okay.
We were just to put. We were told to put things on anything on our license that we might possibly have, and then if it wasn't required, then it could be wrote back on. But outside music is not something we desperately need, and if it was easier to remove it and just be subject to a temporary event notice, for instance, for that, if we plan to hold that, then that's certainly something we could do instead.
Okay, I think that would help matters considerably on that matter. Actually, you've answered the second one. My next question was really going to be about if there were going to be barbecues or that sort of thing, and the position of the house with regard to the rest of the land and the tennis courts you're thinking of selling. But if there's not going to be any music going on outside, then that takes those questions away. Thank you. I'll come back again.
Can we now move to Councillor Wardridge? Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. Thank you. So when you engaged with the community within the roads there, what was the major concern that you had back from them? Because I'm assuming you did do an outreach to them and gather their thoughts. What would they sort of say the 2 or 3 major issues?
We didn't do any. We weren't. It wasn't suggested or required to necessarily speak out to them beforehand, but the major things that came back was the 1:30 licensing on a Friday and Saturday night, which I can understand. Would, as soon as I looked at it on the bit of paper, it looked like we were turning into some form of late night establishment.
That's great. So there was no engagement with community, your local community at all. Okay. Tell me so therefore you would have no idea with regard to perhaps the issue that the local residents have with regard to noise. Did you prep yourself therefore to come back to us with regard to what soundproofing you're going to be doing with the windows, doors, the issues with regard to the fences? Is there potentially something you could do there to abate the noise, to dampen the noise? Because this is all about the noise.
We wasn't, I'd just say, expecting a major issue. As I say, as it's been pointed out, the club was on the wrong license, and this was literally just to change over to be on the correct license. We haven't, to my knowledge, and looking for our records, got a list of complaints for the noise. And to our knowledge, we haven't had a complaint from the council or the police in regards to parties that have been going on in the past. So we wasn't necessarily expecting a massive complaint about the noise. So in terms of soundproofing, the building's quite old now. There will be, if when the land sale goes through, upgrades to the building, obviously, but as a small charity club, we wouldn't have the finances to soundproof all the walls that would necessarily require it. And I'm not massively convinced that the sound is that loud outside when the doors and windows are shut. And I do get in the summer that the doors are open, and they have been, which is where the air conditioning unit from me came in, and that was my suggestion. But with the doors shut, I mean, I was stood outside it for 5 minutes on Saturday night, and I could barely hear the noise. I'm sure residents would take a different view to that, but without measuring it from their house, I can't comment on what the neighbours say.
Thank you. One other brief one. Light pollution. What are your thoughts on the light pollution that's going to be coming from?
So again, it's never been raised as an issue until the thing. We do have blinds in our exterior walls that lead out to the badminton hall, and interestingly, something that so they can certainly be shut, and there's no reason why we can't put this. There isn't two on the doors, but we can certainly put 2 blinds on there, and then the lights are all be maintained within the hall.
But there are no windows that face Knightwood Crescent at all.
Yeah.
So the only windows that could possibly be letting light out the hall would be coming through down towards the tennis courts. But again, that's going through 2 sets of doors, 2 sets of windows. So not quite sure. That's a bit of a curveball, that one. But
okay, thank you. Any more questions from members? I have 2 quick ones. You mentioned litter and what you do to clear up litter. Could you go into a bit more detail, because this really came up on a few of the objections? What can you do to mitigate against litter? And my other question, people leaving, making noise, shouting, good nighting as they go. What can you do to control that kind of behaviour?
Obviously, in line with so go to the litter. We regularly have, in fact, Nick, the other guy that's in here, is normally going around collecting any of the litter. I don't see why that can't extend slightly into. I mean, nobody's going to be walking particularly far down Somerset Close, because if they are to go out that way, you'd be walking onto the A3. But there's no reason why we couldn't just include a little bit of that if that is a particular problem. But we certainly like to litter pick our certain driveway all the way down to the main road. And the other point was, what was the other point? People leaving. Sorry. So in line with what Police Hopkins said at our meeting with him would be to have signs up, particularly to say about leaving, and to have us regularly out. Like we can ask the DJ to just before he closes down to make sure people leave quietly, and we can be out there periodically to try and make sure people are being as quiet as possible. Obviously, we're not going to be able to completely stop it, but we can certainly be out there to try as much as possible as people are leaving.
Thank you. I think that brings our questions to an end. Thank you. So we move on to responsible authorities. I think this has already been said, but as referred to in the report, the initial concerns raised by responsible authorities have been satisfied, and no representations have been received from any responsible authorities. So we come to other persons. There were 13 valid representations from other persons, one of which has now been withdrawn, I believe. The objections are set out on pages A32 to A55 of the agenda reports pack. 3 objectors registered to speak, 2 are present. Paragraph 47 on page 4 of the agenda pack deals with the length of time an other person, that's an objector, can speak. The other persons both have 5 minutes. Alice will advise you when you have 1 minute left and when your time is up. I will now call on Rachel Lambert to speak, and you have 5 minutes, Rachel. Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm actually here to speak on behalf of a number of residents on Knightwood Crescent. So I'm representing at least 8 different households. We live on a very quiet residential street that runs along the back of the sports club. Many of our houses are within a very close proximity of the club. We estimate that our own house is less than 30 metres away. We feel that this application does not take into the account the very close proximity of residential housing surrounding the club. This housing contains families with young children, professionals working from home, professionals working in high-stress environments in the private and the public sector, who have all chosen to live in a quiet, friendly residential area. This allows them to de-stress and enjoy time with their families. There are also a number of elderly residents whose grandchildren are also frequent visitors. We are all against this licence being granted. Our main objection does centre around public nuisance and noise. At the moment, the club certificate allows them to play music on 15 occasions on a Saturday night per year. When this happens, we are all very aware. The music has a strong thumping bass beat and disturbs us in our houses, even with double glazing and our windows shut. A few weeks ago, my daughter could not sleep because of this music, which could be clearly heard, particularly the bass beat of it. She described at 11 o'clock, she came down and she described her bedroom as vibrating with the noise, and she could not sleep. Despite several complaints over the years and from several residents, including ourselves, nothing has been done to rectify the noise pollution and disturbance. We are very concerned that if this licence is granted, that music of this nature will disturb us perhaps every weekend and on some weekdays as well. And also that the application also asks that music be played outside until 7 p.m. on some days. This is a grave concern, as many of our families enjoy using gardens, and these are quiet places in which we play, recharge, enjoy nature. And for us, this is a really important part of our mental well-being. The request that there might also be extended hours past midnight when music could be played is also unacceptable. As I said before, we and our children cannot sleep sometimes when the club plays music, and any extension of this kind must be deemed as public nuisance that could lead to detrimental mental health of local residents and public disorder from those frequenting the club. RBK's licensing policy points out that venues playing music in residential areas should undertake measures such as fitting noise limiters, soundproofing, and that venue owners should go to listen and to see if music is disturbing residents nearby. To the best of my knowledge, these things have never been done or put in place, and they have not mentioned in the email we received from Mr. Rickman. Mr. Rickman's personal assurances that the venue would not change in nature to become a nightclub cannot be really held accountable, because if this licence were to be granted, as I understand it, the current club certificate allows members and their guests to drink alcohol and attend functions at the club. If the licence was granted, members of the public could go to drink alcohol and dance at the club every weekend. This would drastically change the nature of the club from a local sports club to a late night drinking and dancing venue. As the club is in such close proximity to residential housing on all sides, this cannot happen, as it is bound to lead to disorderly behaviour and public nuisance on a very large scale. To conclude, the residents of Knightwood Crescent object to all aspects of this licence application on the grounds that it would be a grave public nuisance on a very regular basis. We know that the club would not be able to take measures to ensure that we are not disturbed, as they have not done this in the last several years. And just, if I do have time, just to pick up a couple of points that Mr. Rickman raised. The light pollution is not something that we are particularly bothered about. However, there is a light on your upper floor, I think, that shines into our house every night. There's no blind at that window. And also, myself and my husband have made at least 4 complaints. They were all before COVID, admittedly, but in the time we've lived in our house for several years. And I do know that other local residents have made complaints to the club. To be honest, because we know at the moment these parties are limited to 15 occasions a year, we kind of put up with it and go, oh, the squash club, the sports club is having another event. If it were to be available every weekend, this drastically changes that.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for Ms. Lambert? Just one quick one from me, please. When you say you've complained, how did you complain? Did you phone up on the night, or did you write a letter afterwards?
Yes, so on the nights where we complained, we phoned the club. I think so previously, this hasn't happened in the last few years, but in kind of several years, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the club would often have music playing after it was allowed to. It would break the terms of its certificate license, and so on those occasions we would ring, and on one occasion I do remember the music got turned down, but then it got turned back up again.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sure they'll come back to answer that. Thank you. Any more questions from members? Okay, so now I'd like to call on Steve Soughton, do I say that right, to speak. Again, you have 5 minutes, and Alice will tell you when you have 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not going to make any real submission. My submissions are as I wrote in about. I just want to pick up a couple of points that we sort of covered over the last few minutes. As regards the hours, Mr. Rickman sent out this email saying, oh, they're going to be essentially the same as the current certificate. Well, in fact, they're nothing like the current certificate, because they actually allow for some provision of music or dance every day of the week, from various hours in the morning up to the closing hours. If, as he says, that they don't have that many events, why therefore is he applying for these extra hours when they don't need them? That's my first thought. My second thought is that if we're going to have these large events there, how are they going to be stewarded? The staffing levels are very small at the club. I know this for a fact, and Mr. Rickman even said that all they have is the bar staff there, basically. So there's no provision for stewarding or for seeing people off the premises at night either. And my third point is the provisions of these extra days. It seems quite strange that here they are applying for all these extra hours, and they still need these extra provisions for events. It just seems extraordinary to me. My concerns are still as they were, as I've set out, the noise and the likelihood of disorder at the premises and outside the premises, disturbing what is mainly a residential area. And you know, as Rachel said, there are many families, and we've got a care home just at the bottom of the road. These are all going to be impacted by any events that might occur at the club. And that's all I've got to say about it.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Soughton? No, I don't have any either. Thank you very much. So now I turn back to the applicant, Mr. Rickman. Would you like to make any closing remarks?
So one remark that picking up on from Rachel about non-members, we will still be a members club, and you, apart from members functions, non-members won't be permitted to attend the club just to drink. It will not be a pub for anybody to just walk into. It is still a members club. The only provision for non-members will be as a guest of a member or for the Saturday evening functions. To pick up on one of Stephen's points about the extensions, we didn't ask for those. That you would be required as a normal club. If we have a premises license, we'd be entitled to 15 TENS licenses a year as standard. The police wanted the power of veto, and they reduced. What was originally suggested was 15. He rode it back to 12. As I say, we didn't ask for them. They just come as standard. As far as I'm aware, we didn't ask for those. If we were going to put a figure on it, we'd be happy to limit that to 4 probably. As I say, last year we had 1 past midnight, and although somebody actually told me yesterday that I think the Old People's Charity that we held is not going to do it this year, so it may only be 1 again this year, which would be New Year's Eve. To say we have a limited number of staff, so we don't particularly want to be going on to playing music till 1:30 in the morning, because there isn't the number of staff to cover that. In terms of stewarding outside, I also steward for a football club, so I've taken my level. I'm in the process of taking the level 2 stewarding course with the FA, and I'm also, as part of the license agreement, going to be seeking to take SIA, which is the Security Industry Association, I believe, license. So hopefully that would cover other points. I can't comment, obviously, on complaints made on the phone that didn't come to me. And if that is the case, you have my sincere apologies if music has been going on at times that it shouldn't have been and above noise levels. I have 2 young children myself, and I know that I've had neighbours where I've had to go down and complain. I can only deal with what's going to happen going forward. I obviously can only apologise for what's happened in the past. In line with the licence trading standards, we now have a brand new incident book and refusals book for any incidents that are logged, which are inspectable by the police and the licensing authority. And I'd be happy to agree to it here that if you raise an issue or complaint that you want to come down and check that it's been logged in that book, I would be happy to agree to that as well.
I would also suggest that any complaints are followed up with by letter or email. Yeah,
that's another suggestion. If you make a complaint on the phone, follow it up with an email. You will have I say the same thing at my football club when people raise an issue or a thing. Raise it with an email. You will have a receipt that it's been logged. Somebody may have dealt with that on the phone, and it may have been one of the younger members of staff that have told them to turn it down and they've ignored them. As I can't comment on what's happened when I wasn't there. But you certainly have. I'm certainly happy for you to make, if you make a complaint. I certainly, to my knowledge, haven't had one from the police or the licensing authorities. But any neighbour complaints that they wish to raise, I'm more than happy for you for a week later to come down and inspect our book to make sure it's been noted, and any action that you might not agree with necessarily the outcome of it, but it certainly will be noted and there'll be a record of it.
Could I also add that there was a comment from Rachel about the light from upstairs, but we don't have an upper story. The hall itself is single story with a pitched roof. The squash courts are 2-story, but they don't have any windows at all. and the gym around the back is 2-storey. That doesn't have any windows at all. So I'm not sure which light it is, but there certainly isn't a light up there. Most of the lights are on the front porch, which shine down the tennis courts. Secondly, I do think, if I remember correctly, Rachel talked about complaints, but did say that she hasn't made any for several years, I think. And I can't remember any complaints coming through at all. And finally, I think Stephen was talking about music and events during the week, but we can't have any during the week. Badminton is played every night from 7 until we close the hall at 10. And then that's it. So we can't have events during the week at all. Friday nights in the winter is most often badminton matches, and we have very rarely have an event on a Friday night. We don't like them on a Friday night.
Just to clarify with this light, if it could be pointed out to us which light this is, if there's no blind on that, I will make it my personal guarantee I will go and put a blind on it myself this week. So I will apologise for that, because I can imagine that lights flashing into people's windows. If we're not aware of that as an issue, but we're quite happy to get a blind put up for you. And with the provision of as I say, with dance and thing, we were advised that when we're applying for anything that you might possibly have, to avoid the need for extra event notice, temporary event notices, to just include them on a license. I'm quite happy for, again, the dance is non-existent. As I say, I'm quite happy to remove that if people are concerned about the
Dancing at functions is also included, I think, isn't it?
I'm not sure that dance. I'm not sure under the provision of dance if that would be included as a separate thing from a function on a Saturday night. But in terms of actual dancers, it's
dancing events we don't have.
Very, yeah. I'm quite happy to remove them and go back to just have them on the non-standard things from the police, which the police have. I'm not sure if it was commented on, but the police, for one of those non-standard of events, the police have absolute power to veto it in the event that they don't agree with it. It's not, we can't just send them an email and say we're holding an event till 4 o'clock in the morning. If they say no, that's the end of it. We don't have a right to appeal over that. It's not that I'm aware of anyway. I think if there's any other,
no, that's all I've got.
If there's anything I haven't answered that you would like answered, please be my guest. There was obviously lots been said, so if there's anything that I haven't answered that you'd like me to answer, please do.
Well, procedure doesn't allow Rachel to clarify where this window is, but I'm sure you can be in touch and let them know, please, because I think this is quite important. So procedure now moves on. The subcommittee will now withdraw and make its decision. I would like to thank everyone for their patience in this very long and involved meeting. The decision will be confirmed to all parties by email, and the full decision notice with reasons will be then sent to all parties within 5 working days. So you should hear the decision today. Is that right, Nikki? And then the actual detail within 5 days. So thank you very much for coming, everybody. I'm going to ask members of the subcommittee to reconvene straight away in the decision meeting for the decision, because we have another hearing coming up quite soon. But thank you very much, and have a lovely day, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.